Today we're jumping into a story that honestly stayed with me for a long time after watching it. I watched it a good few years ago and I still think about it to this day. It's about a painting that carried a family's pride, history, and their identity all until the art world took it from them. And decades later, when the truth finally came out, it wasn't what anybody expected. This is the story of the Cropper family, a lost painting, and a secret hidden beneath the paint. This is the Cropper family, and they'd owned a landscape painting for generations. It had been passed from father to son, and it wasn't just a decoration. It was a part of their home, their heritage, their story. And for most of that time, everyone believed that it was a painting by Thomas Gainsborough, one of UK's most celebrated artists, but all of that changed in 1977. An expert reattributed the painting to somebody else, not another artist, not even a follower, but it was attributed to Barker of Bath, and even later it was downgraded further to a follower of Barker of Bath, a quote-unquote bin name, which is basically the art world's way of saying, we don't know who painted this and we really don't care. Imagine someone telling you that your family heirloom is essentially the artistic equivalent of a Poundland knockoff. I would actually be heartbroken. And the family basically felt the same way because they actually ripped the Gainsborough plaque off of the painting when they found this out. And not only did they rip it off, they threw it straight in the bin. I think that moment says everything. But to understand why this hurt so much, you do have to understand Gainsborough. He wasn't just a painter, he was a storyteller of the British landscape. His brushwork was very loose, lyrical, almost musical in a sense because everything blended together really nicely. And another interesting thing about Gainsborough, although we know him as a landscape painter, he actually made his money through painting portraits. Landscape paintings were just his passion in a time where there wasn't actually a appetite for landscape paintings. And by the way, Gainsborough paintings are not cheap at all. They go for about 2 million average, and I think the most expensive one, it was this portrait called Portrait of Miss Reed, and £6.5 million is what someone paid for it. Quick fact update, there was actually a painting that was sold for even more than that in 2019, which took over the record, which is called Going to Market Early Morning, and it sold for £7.9 million. In a 1929 valuation, the Cropper painting was confidently attributed to Gainsborough, complete with the plaque and all, which was obviously later taken off, but it did originally have that Gainsborough plaque on it. So when they lost that attribution, you understand now why it was such a big deal. Not only were they losing an heirloom, was they losing a piece of, what this family's been tied to, but they were losing a hell of a lot of money as well. A life-changing amount of money possibly. But decades later, a TV show called Fake or Fortune picked up the case. Philip Mould, a host of the show, recognises the landscape as a sketch that he knows to be dated from 1753/1754. This is also supposed to be a lost painting. And because Prince reversed the image, the flipped composition actually strengthens the case of Cropper's painting. The general composition, the trees, the sky, everything lines up. So naturally, the question becomes, is this the original or is this a copy? And this is where things get a bit messy because the provenance now, it's not so simple. It is very chaotic. There's a chaos trail of auction houses, private collections, country estates. It's all over the place. It's basically trying to solve a mystery with about half the pages missing. Now here's where the story gets even more intense because in the world of Gainsborough authentication, there is only one man's opinion who actually matters. One expert, one gatekeeper, one person who can officially say, yes, this is a Gainsborough, or no, it's not. And his name is Hugh Belzy, the leading Gainsborough scholar. He spent decades studying the artist, the brushwork, the strokes, the quirks, the compositions, the pigments. If Gainsborough has no fans, this man is dead. If anybody knows anything about Gainsborough, it is this man. But here's the twist. Hugh Belzy had already authenticated a painting that was very, very similar. Same composition, same structure, same Gainsborough feel. And this raised a very difficult question. If the Cropper painting was genuine, then the painting that he had earlier authenticated, The Gypsies, which was authenticated in 1999, might not actually be real. And this is where human nature kicks in, because some people had wondered carefully and quietly whether Belzy said no to the Cropper painting, not because of evidence, but for his own reputation, for his own pride, possibly even his own ego, because questioning it would mean that he would have to recall a previous authentication that he's done, which is a very human fear of being wrong. Here's one of the things that really surprised me, and this is what made me want to make this video because this is the thing that stuck with me for the longest time, is that Fake or Fortune actually uncovered so many things that proved that it actually could be a Gainsborough. For example, the matching composition, the brushwork similarities, and the provenance. Although they couldn't authenticate every single date, they did have some very strong contenders, one of them being a ink stamp from the Christie's gallery. There was also things like the materials, which were scientifically tested to show that they didn't use any 19th century pigments, which obviously strengthens the case. I think even possibly one up from the provenance is the fact that scholars like Sir Ellis Waterhouse and John Hayes had previously supported the attribution to Gainsborough. The Fake or Fortune team genuinely believed that they was going to get a yes, and you can feel it throughout the episode. You can feel it as they're gathering the evidence. The energy shifts, they're excited, they're confident, and they think they're going to crack it, and then they get a big fat no. But it does not end there. The team decided to take the painting to the Courtauld Institute for Forensic Analysis. And this is where everything changes. Beneath the landscape is a portrait, a woman's face that was painted decades earlier. A whole other painting under his painting. And it wasn't by Gainsborough. It was by Michael Dahl, a Swedish-born portrait painter working in the early 1700s. It was a commonly known thing when artists were a bit tight on money. They may have borrowed from their art friends and used some old canvases that may have been painted on, may have had sketches. So a lot of the times when you're looking into old paintings and trying to authenticate them, you will see things, sketches, paintings under the actual painting that you can see. As I mentioned earlier, the pigment analysis verified that there were no 19th century paints, which cut out it being a copy. And here's the irony, the painting underneath, so the portrait of the lovely lady by Michael Dahl, is actually more expensive than the painting that's on top by Barker of Bath. So for Mark Cropper, the owner, it was a bittersweet reveal. He did say that he was gutted, and honestly, who wouldn't be? But he said that he was happy that he's gone on this journey and that his painting does at least have a story. But my personal opinion, I want to be really honest, I think the Cropper family were caught in something that was way bigger than they knew or even expected, because they wasn't just asking whether the painting was real or not. They were asking the art world to reconsider a decision that had been made from a top dog. Because when I look at the painting, not that I'm an expert, but you can't help but see how similar they look. And I do wonder gently, whether Cropper's painting was rejected partly because accepting it would mean that Besley would have to actually retract what he's previously said. And as he's the only authenticator, it would draw every other thing that he's authenticated into questioning. Also, in the Fake or Fortune episode, he really didn't give too deep of an explanation as to why he didn't authenticate it. He just said that the brushstrokes were too tentative, which it's not much. It really is not much. But at the end of the day, the painting wasn't a lost Gainsborough, but it was something else. It was a window into two artists colliding, you know, one painting on top of the other, a story that ran through centuries. And I guess the real masterpiece isn't the actual painting, it is the story that comes with it.